Ready? I would like to open this meeting for Thursday, October 27th for a board workshop on early childhood education and the strategic plan. If you all will please join me and rise, we'll have the invocation, which I will do, and Mr. Ballou will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and the so many opportunities we have before us as we learn about ways that we can better educate our very, very young people to help them with literacy and math skills and the basic skills that they need to be successful. Help us and be with us. Guide us to make great decisions that benefit children and their families and give our community an opportunity to be the best that it can be. We ask these things in your name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We now move to call to order. I call this meeting to order. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
District 9, President Tapman.
Present.
District 4, Vice President Collins. District 1, Mr. Blue.
Here.
District 2, Mr. Landon. District 3, Mr. Howard. District 5, Ms. Ware Jackson.
Present.
District 6, Ms. Dyson. District 7, Mr. Gode.
Present.
District 8, Ms. Bernard.
Thank you. We do not need a quorum for a workshop, but we go through the formality anyway. And so we will move now to item B1, presentations. Dr. Narcisse.
Thank you, President Tapman. Super excited about tonight because we have been working tremendously hard to expand early childhood education and discuss strategies on how we can expand that across our parish. A part of our work has been not only to get our community to understand that it's important to improve workforce development or middle school transitions or getting kids to read to be at third grade levels, but it really starts what we call from cradle to career. And a part of that work, we've been really excited that Dr. Lashley and Chanel Webb in their team have been working with the Louisiana Policy Institute to be able to begin to think through that program. What we're really hopeful for as we continue to build out across this parish is that we're building a place where all of the children and families can see that the work deals from cradle to career in order to expand our work. And so we are excited tonight that we're going to talk through a little bit about all the programs and also the strategic plan that has been worked on for a while. We've made tremendous amount of investment, which I thank this board for, to start that conversation off because early childhood has been important. I know it's been something as a part of our strategic plan and also has been important for us to continue to help our community to become one of the best urban school districts in the United States. And so we feel that we're on that direction. So I'm going to ask for Dr. Lashley and Chanel Webb to come up as they will present the team of folks that will present tonight.
For President Tapman. Thank you all for joining us this evening. I'm so very pleased to present the resourceful consultants that we've been working with on this strategic plan. And I want to welcome up at this time Mr. Hamilton Jones, and he will get us started off to talk about the strategic plan.
Thank you. Thank you, Shanoa. I'm just going to put this up just a little. All right. Thank you, Dr. Narcisse and Mr. Tapman and members of the board. My name is Hamilton Simons Jones. I'm with Resourceful Consulting, and I'm honored to have been able to facilitate the process since February of this year to develop a comprehensive plan to expand access to early childhood education in East Baton Rouge Parish. Before we dive into the plan, I want to just say a couple of words about where we are and why. You know, our objective was to develop plans about how we can really expand access to early childhood education, because right now We have about 2/3 of our third graders in EBR schools that are not reading on grade level. And that is not a failure of first or second or third grade teachers or even kindergarten. That is because more than 2/3 of our kindergartners are already entering behind, and they're not meeting literacy benchmarks even at kindergarten. And, we have a real challenge in the parish, right? We know that almost 1/3 of the babies that are born in East Baton Rouge Parish are born into households in poverty. And those households need support to make sure they are able to juggle all of their responsibilities and make sure that their children are ready by kindergarten. Because we know that even between the households in poverty and the households that are considered ALICE, asset limited, income constrained, and employed, those are working poor. That is more than half of our families in East Baton Rouge Parish. And for many of them, they cannot afford their own early childhood education, and there is not a guaranteed funding stream or guaranteed seat for every child until kindergarten. So we have been working since February with a committee, and I think the slides, with a committee of 25 leaders from across our community who have really been helping inform and guide the development of this plan. And you can see we have representatives of philanthropy, representatives of different early childhood education programs across the school system, our childcare provider partners, even some of the home-based childcare, Head Start and Early Head Start, as well as experts from across our community and representatives of the business community as well. I want to actually let one of our representatives speak right now, and that is Dr. Libby Saunier, the Executive Director of the Louisiana Policy Institute for Children. They are really the experts in Louisiana on early childhood education policy, and let Libby say a couple of words about why this matters so much. Thank you.
So happy to be with you all today. What we know about early learning is that it's an investment. At the end of the day, we know that 80% of brain development happens by age 3 and 90% by age 4. And what we know is that research shows us this: for children that receive high quality early care and education during those first 5 years of life, they have higher IQ, less rates of retention into special ed, less rates of teenage pregnancy. They're more likely not to drop out of high school. If they go to college, they finish college. And that at the end of the day, they're not engaged in the criminal justice system, which we can all agree these are all attributes that we would want for all of our children. And what we know too as well is that longitudinally, that for every dollar that we spend, we can get at least a 13% return on investment. We now think it's up to 18%. And I don't know about you all, but I know about me, I can't put my money anywhere and get that type of return on investment. And so it's critically important at the end of the day. Additionally, it's not just about making sure that children have all the access to what they need. We also know that early care and education, quality early care and education, is really dependent on our workforce, because we know that we have to have parents be able to go to school, work, or look for work. And just in EBR Parish, we know that 76% of our children under age 6 have all of their available parents in the labor force. Additionally, for parents with children under the age of 4, childcare issues result in more than 16% of them quitting their jobs, nearly 14% of them turning down a promotion, and 18% going from full-time to part-time work. We also know that parents surveyed that almost 50% had to miss work regularly due to childcare breakdowns. And fundamentally, what we know is this: in Louisiana, childcare breakdowns cost our economy $1.3 billion. That wasn't an M, that was a B, $billion. This is a lot of money. And it cost our companies about $762 million per year. So this is a workforce of today issue as well as a workforce of tomorrow issue. And then if we look at East Baton Rouge families who are lacking access to high quality early care and education during those first 4 years of life, you can see that we have nearly 30,000 children under age 5 in our EBR system. About a little over 16,000 under age 5 are economically disadvantaged, and we are currently not serving a little over 10,000 children under age 5. So 67% are unserved in a publicly funded program. If we want a successful K-12 system, we need a successful early childhood system. And this is a continuum. It's not just early childhood doing all the hard work that they need to do, but it's also our K-12 system doing what they need to do. And so it's really about a continuum of service across the lifespan and making sure that from day one, that we know that young children can have access to high quality early care and education. I'll turn it over to Shanoa now.
I have a question, if you wouldn't mind. I didn't want to interrupt in the middle of it. You said in the slide that was just up, it said 10,791 economically disadvantaged children under age 5
Yes.
are unserved. Do you have a differentiation between those who want this service and those who don't?
No, sir, it's just unserved versus served.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're
That was it.
Good afternoon again. So the network was designed to create change. In 2012, the Department of Education stated, hey, there's a fragmented system across the state of Louisiana. Child carers were doing their own thing. There was no accountability system. And so they said, hey, let's create the networks in which either the district could be the lead agency or a resource and referral agency. And so in our district, we are the lead agency. So in 2014, before I came aboard, this district had already enacted the EBR Early Childhood Network. And so at that time, we had about 50 child care centers. We partnered with Early Head Start, and some private and parochial. Those numbers have grown since then. And so what we're designed to do is to turn that into a Ready Start network. The Ready Start network means that, hey, we know that there's a lack of funding, federally and as well as state. So what we want to do is strategically plan how to work with our business industries as well as other partners to create other funding sources to support it and to sustain this great plan that we have in place. And so this year we started thinking about a new concept of diverse delivery. This is one in which we work with our child care centers. If they have the space and if they're high quality according to the accountability system, then they will use some of our funding that we receive from the state, and then they will expand into their centers. But then we also are using what we call the micro centers. This is new, and it came from Dr. Sanye. And she came up with us with this plan. And so we said, hey, if EBR has the space, then we partner with a high quality child care center. Let's move and license a part of our building so those child care centers can build it into our space. We piloted this process this year at Westminster as well as Crestworth, and it's going so well that we want to duplicate it. And so here's a quote that we have in the green section. It says, and this is from Miss Bowie. She's a parent, but she's also a pre-K teacher in our system. While attending Kids Carousel at Crestworth, my daughter gained foundational literacy skills and important social skills. Every day she would come home excited to share the new things she learned. The skills she gained helped her have a successful transition to pre-K this school year. And guess what? She attended our pre-K 3 classroom at Crestworth, and now this child's in our pre-K 4 classroom at Crestworth. So we retain this child in the school system. And so we're looking for really good things to happen here. Again, the micro center, the responsibilities that we just provide the space. We use some of our funding so we can provide salary for the teacher. And then the child care center, they're responsible for hiring, supervising, and managing the payroll and maintaining their licensing. So we're very proud of this process. It's something that we really would like to duplicate in other areas.
All right, so let's get into the vision and the priorities here of this plan. So here's the long-term vision. I mean, we really want to get to a place where every child has access to high quality early care and education. I mean, we've just laid out, we know families need it. We know the difference it makes for young children. And we want to get to a place where every family has the knowledge, ability, and opportunity to access a variety of affordable, equitable, and high quality early education experiences that support kindergarten readiness, regardless of where they live in the parish, regardless of the resources they have or don't have. And there are 3 prongs to that vision. The first is that families experience high quality customer service. You may be starting to hear parts of your strategic plan in here, right? A loving and safe environment and an easy to navigate process. You know, part of the reason the Department of Education first passed this effort to create community networks is, you know, there are many options for childcare, and you have to go one by one to find it, and you end up on waiting lists and there aren't spots. And so the idea of families really being able to come to the district as they can with the K-12 system and be able to have an understanding of their options and be able to enroll their child. The second is educators. Early care and education professionals are responsible for that critical period of brain development. Sometimes it looks like play. That is developmentally appropriate education happening, but they are learning critical early literacy skills, social skills, and yet our educators too often are undervalued and underpaid. The average wage in early learning environments is $9.88 in the state of Louisiana. And for most folks working in childcare, due to the way it's structured and funded, they do not have benefits, they don't have retirement, and they're working 12 months a year, often 9 hours a day. So really, the vision is to create a space where educators are deeply respected and attracted by a well-developed educator pathway, competitive compensation, and professional development. And then the vision for the EBR Ready Start network that Shanoa just spoke about is a strong collaborative with diverse and sustainable funding that brings together partners to expand access, coordinate funding, family and community engagement, and educator recruitment and development. So what we are out to do is to double access to early learning by 2030. And you can see on this slide, the chart, the darker green on the left is where we currently are in terms of the number of children enrolled. And the lighter color on the right is the vision of where we want to be by 2030. That would get us to serving nearly 75% of all economically disadvantaged children under age 5 and over half of all of our 3- and 4-year-olds, regardless of their economic status. So to do that, Shanoa talked about diverse delivery. We do not have 6,500 spots in schools. And often we don't have buildings that are set up for infants and toddlers and some of the younger ones. So that is going to really take a coordinated effort across our community that includes family childcare homes, includes more of these micro centers in schools, includes the expansion of Head Start and early Head Start programs. It's going to require new early learning hubs, which would be having a few of our schools where we have a facility on the campus that is dedicated to being a high quality early learning program that serves children from birth on up to kindergarten, as well as our type 3 community-based childcare centers who are absolutely critical to being able to have the capacity to reach the number of kids we need to. And of course, adding pre-K classrooms in our schools. The other thing to consider is, 6,500 additional early learning seats would take, based on the ratios and the calculations of the age requirements, because there are different ratios by different age groups, would take about 1,400 additional educators that we don't have right now. In fact, we actually, as you all know, are struggling after the 2 years of the pandemic to make sure we have the educators to fill the seats we have. And that would also take about 809 additional classrooms. So I'm about to go into details about, the 5 priorities of the plan to really get us here. The first priority is expanded and easier access for families. So our goal here is to improve the availability and the ease of access for parents and families seeking early care and education for their children before kindergarten. Right now, as I said, and as Dr. Saunier showed you, there's a huge gap in the number of families who could benefit from this and the number of slots that are currently available. And too often, families don't understand their options. It is complicated and confusing, and you need to get on a wait list as soon as you find out you're pregnant if you want a shot at getting a seat, right? And so there are three main objectives here. The first is to increase the availability of early care and education options. The second is to expand efforts to educate and inform parents and families about those options. And then the third is to establish a coordinated enrollment system. So there really is a one place, kind of one-stop shop to be able to access your early care and education options. Now, this is, over the next 8 to 10 years, but some of our first year priorities are to expand those micro schools that we have, to do more to engage the family home childcare providers in the system who have largely not been a part of the system, to really focus, and the Shanoa and her team have done a phenomenal job already that we can build on, where there are available seats, they go into neighborhoods and they do it everywhere to make sure families know they're available. Watch out if y'all have a small child and any of that team is around, because they're going to come tell you all about what their options are. And really to have a focused recruitment strategy for that, and then to create a coordinated enrollment task force. Because it is complicated to figure out how to get to one system when you have Head Start programs, early Head Start programs, you have private childcare centers, you have pre-K classrooms, you have about 6 different funding streams and eligibility requirements across those programs. And so we're going to need to spend this next year really working with a task force to make sure we've designed a coordinated enrollment system that works for families and makes sense for the various providers to be able to deliver on it. The second strategy is around educator recruitment and training. And the goal here is to develop educator recruitment and training programs to improve and maintain quality care and increase educator stability across early care and education programs and settings. Across Louisiana, in Type 3, which are publicly funded childcare programs, early learning programs, we have almost half of our teachers over the course of a 2-year period that leave the classroom. So, and as I said, when it's $9.88 and you can go work at, Popeyes for $15 an hour, that is a real reality, especially when you're putting yourself at risk and working as hard as you do. I mean, we have passionate educators, and we need to make sure we are supporting them. So we have high turnover. We have, often challenging environments that they're working in terms of around the clock. There's not a lot of room to be sick, and there's lots of snotty noses around you at the same time, right? So the 3 objectives here are really about increasing local recruitment efforts to make sure there is not every program has to go find its own teachers, but that there is some effort that on a community-wide basis, we are really promoting this as a field and opportunities in it. The second is to really start to look at the pathways work from high school into early learning. For most teachers, they can start with a child development associate's credential that many of them could come very far along in earning while they're in high school. And there are many high schoolers who love working with children and would love an opportunity like that if given the chance to, go into the field beginning in high school. And then the third is to increase support and incentives for professional advancement. Right now there's professional development opportunities, but there is not a well-developed pathway for early learning professionals to continue to advance in the field, go on from that CDA credential to an associate's degree to a bachelor's degree and so on. So the first year priorities here are really to focus on that high school pathways program and work on aligning the incentives for professional development across the field, which is going to take some work with the State Department of Education as well to make sure we're doing that not just here, but they control some of that. So that's the educator recruitment and training. The third is around family. The third priority is family engagement and leadership. And the goal here is to advance the capacity for family engagement and leadership in the Ready Start network and really across the system. So, we know parents are children's first teachers, and they are really critical partners in this, and particularly when they are younger and when the child is younger, our partnership with them is extra important. Yet too often they are not full partners in the process, and they're not supported in supporting child development at home, and as we are supporting them in the early learning center. So there are 3 objectives here. The first is to incentivize and support family engagement across the Ready Start network. We know this, there's many places parents and families interact. For some, it's at the child care center. For some, it's at the central office around enrollment. And we really want wherever they interact to be supported in having good family engagement practices. The second is to develop families as leaders and champions. So we know that a fellow parent is one of the most influential people to be able to determine what I should be doing with my child. I ask my friends who have young children, maybe a year or 2 older than mine, right? And so we believe that we can develop a family influencer campaign where we have families that are champions in the community that understand how the system works, understand how to navigate it, and are out promoting it with their peers. The third is to connect families to wraparound services, resources, and supports. Often families with young children need additional supports. The whole early Head Start and Head Start model has been built and evaluated for 40 years around having wraparound supports for families and making sure in some instances we are supporting the health of the child, early intervention where needed, and really laying the foundation for school readiness as they grow older. And we really want to make sure we are doing that in this instance as well. And so here, the first year priorities are the family influencer campaign I talked about and really getting that off the ground. Establishing we have a Ready Start Network Advisory Council and making sure there's family representation in that group. And then bringing on additional capacity to support social work and case management. The fourth priority is around collaboration and communication. As we've talked about, there's a number of stakeholders that really need to work very closely for this all to work. And so, the goal is to improve collaboration and communication across all the stakeholders in the early care and education system. And, quite honestly, we can't achieve the vision without it. So there are 3 objectives here. One is really to share this plan and build broader consensus around it so we all are rowing in the same direction toward a common goal. The second is to expand the engagement of the business community in particular. You heard from Dr. Sonye that the impact on their workforce is real in terms of lack of access to childcare. And we have some of our business leaders that have been very vocal about that on our committee. And then the third is to improve the coordination across the service providers. And so the first year priorities here are really getting the Ready Start Network Advisory Board expanded and meeting regularly to help guide implementation of the plan, to host educational sessions across the community and with business leaders, and to formalize some of the partnerships to better support families and educators. We have lots of examples of great partnership, and right now they happen in pockets here or there, and we really believe we can scale some of those to make them more widely available to all of the partners and all of the children across the system. And the final is sustainable funding, the final priority, which is going to be required to make all of this happen. The goal here is to secure sustainable funding for expanded access to high quality early care and education in East Baton Rouge Parish. So, much of the funding that has supported the recent expansion, I don't know if you saw on Shanoa's slide, but we've actually grown by 7% in terms of access in the last 2 years. So, we've actually made some recent gains, but a lot of that has been done with ESSER funds and ARPA funds and funds that will expire in 2025. And we know that even that is insufficient to meet the need we have. We have a significant need, and that's going to take significant and sustainable funding. So our objectives here are to further leverage the resources we have already, which is both about the dollars, but also about the buildings and the communications capacity and these other things, to explore new dedicated funding to expand access, and to secure additional private and public resources. We've had a number of folks from philanthropy and business at the table who are really excited about this and will support strategic investments to help make it happen. So the first year priorities here are to reestablish the sliding scale tuition we have for the 4-year-old seats, which is going to be able to help subsidize seats across for the 4-year-olds. Second, and we had suspended that during COVID and believe it's time to bring that back, and that's based on income levels. So it's, sliding scale. The second is to work to make sure we can figure out strategies to replace each of the one-time dollars that we are depending on right now by the time those expire. And those are at the state level as well as the local level. And then the third is to launch a local revenue task force and really spend some time over the next several months looking very diligently at all of the possible funding sources for early childhood education, the feasibility of pursuing them, and mapping really plans on which ones we're going to go for and when. So in terms of the funding, I think the important thing to understand about early care and education is there is no MFP for early childhood education. So it is a braided and blended, and we do, the sector does everything it can with the dollars we have across a number of different funding streams that quite honestly are all each inadequate and altogether inadequate. And so we know to achieve this by 2030 is going to take a significant investment, right? It's going to get to about 100 million annually, 95 million in new early learning seats. It'll take about 10 million just to keep the access we've expanded recently. We know we'll have investments in wraparound services. We'll have greater early intervention needs as we have more children where we are identifying their needs earlier. We're then going to need to make sure they're getting services. And we know it's going to take more coordination for all of that. We also know there's a number of one-time investments, right? Facility expansion, teacher recruitment and training, incubation and expansion to be able to grow programs, and to really get this coordinated enrollment system for early childhood up and running. So some of the key new sources we've already identified, we have the sliding scale tuition. We believe we can expand early Head Start and Head Start funding. We are interested in and have done some initial polling that is favorable around dedicated local revenues for early childhood education. There is a state matching fund, the Louisiana Early Childhood Education Fund, that was created several years ago to match local investments in early childhood education. So that provides a dollar for dollar match of local dollars. When we invest federal, it doesn't count. So it's really got to be local dollars that are invested in expanding early learning seats that then we can get a dollar for dollar match from the state, provided there's funding available in the fund. Targeted private and philanthropic investment that I spoke about in this plan, that is really strategic capacity building and expansion costs. It does not make sense to be funding seats for children that off of grants and those sorts of things, but there's a number of other costs that do make a lot of sense to fund that way. We also know there'll be one-time construction costs, and we know there's a number of options for some of those costs to expand facilities, from federal, state, local, and private sources, as well as there's a number of other state and federal funds we've identified that could be feasible to support the workforce development aspects of the plan, support the early health aspects of the plan, and so on and so forth. So lastly, I want to show you some results of a poll that was conducted by Louisiana Policy Institute for Children with LJR Strategies last month. And you can see here that EBR these are registered EBR voters, and that 60% of them said that doubling the number of available spots for young children in community-based childcare is an excellent or good use of public dollars. You can see that that was supported across the community, regardless of what neighborhood it was. And there's a number of other findings in that poll that suggest there is strong support for this. And in fact, that voters are even willing to pay a little more if they need to help make this happen. So with that, I would like to turn it over to just a couple of our committee members, but you look like you have a question first, Mr. Datman.
Mr. Ballou has a question.
Yes.
Thank you. And first of all, I want to thank the committee for all the work that's been put into the plan. It's well thought out and a lot of detail. There was research referenced early in the presentation about the importance of early learning, and I'd like to get the actual studies that were referenced in with the data. I'd like to just look at that sometime. And then also, as far as the priorities in the plan, our goal is to have every child, or our long-term vision is to have every child in a seat from 0 to 5. If we aren't able to find funding, we can still have an impact, I would think, with the expanded and easier access for families and then family engagement leadership. Could you talk about ways that we can reach children, even if there aren't seats available right away, by engaging in this process and being able to impact those that we're trying to reach from 0 to 3 and the families?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so first off, I think the children we are already serving those 5,500 children, and there is a lot we can do to better support those children and families. In terms of professional development with educators, much of which the team here is doing regularly. Materials. So I think first off, I would say those 5,500 that are already in, we want to make sure they have a quality experience. And a lot of the Ready Start Network's activities have really been ensuring more of those spots are quality. So that would be my first response. I think the second is, there are a number of strategies that lots of different communities have employed because, you all are not alone in this gap. And so we know that the family engagement strategies are going to be really critical. And so making sure that even if they don't have a seat, that families are doing everything they understand, brain development and, the stages of of early childhood development and where children should be and how to support it and how to, make sure they're reading to them at home and those strategies. So I think there's a set of family engagement strategies that are going to be really critical as well. And then I'd, love, I don't know if Dr. Sonia, you want to talk about the research any further or anything else you want to add to that?
And I really just wanted to see it. I didn't necessarily need to discuss it right now unless you just had something you wanted to share.
All right, we'll get it to you. Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for this good presentation. I wanted to ask, when we talk about the required investments and potential funding sources, key sources of new revenues. My experience has been that we have not had great success with the sliding scale for decades, because one of the reasons for that is it becomes cost prohibitive, because from what I've always been told is that it has to be the extended hours, it has to be the same length of time that the ones that aren't on sliding scale have, and it has to include these afternoon snacks and this and that. And so for working families, and I remember personally looking at it and saying, there's no way mine are going to the church. Because, it was a Mother's Day out, but it was educational. And so it was very cost prohibitive. There would have been no way I could have done it. And so I worry about putting too much, the thought that that's going to be this great thing for us, because it never has been. And I don't know what we're going to do different about it, how we can charge less to make it feasible. That's just a concern.
Yeah.
Now, when you said new dedicated local revenues, that's taxes, right?
Potentially, yes.
And in your poll, you said even if they have to pay more, can you get me that kind of language that was used so that I can see what they were answering to in the details of this poll?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and by area.
Yep.
Okay, and what was included like in these areas? Okay, thank you. I just really like to see it.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, the state matching funds, we just would have to, we're gonna have to think through what are we taking away to then reallocate funding. And so that's a big discussion, you know, how are we gonna come up with using more of the local dollars
Yeah.
to get that match?
Yeah,
Which
exactly.
is wonderful, wonderful match. But I just want to make sure we know who Peter is and where Peter is.
And I think that that's why it's important to think about the different revenue sources, and that not all revenue sources would have to necessarily be through the school district. That there may be other revenue sources within the parish that we could utilize to increase more access to early care and education. And it's not just up to the school district. It's not just up to the city. It's not just up to the state. And it's not just up to our businesses. It's up to all of us to put in a contract together to say this is so valuable that we all need to put a little skin in the game. But at the end of the day, we want to share the full poll with you so you can see the results,
Yes.
because it's very strong that voters will support supporting young children in our parish.
And you'll give us the details like on how many people were polled in which area and
All the things,
all those things.
Yes,
Was it a live poll? Was it a
all of it.
text poll? What kind of poll? Yeah,
get it for you.
all of that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'll be real interested. And look, I'm not up here being a naysayer. This is all good stuff.
I mean, and we
It's
didn't think that at all. I
just-
just wanted to clarify, because
We have to think
oftentimes
through.
people think, well, we're saying everything has to go through the school district. And that's not what the steering committee has come up with, that it's really a shared vision throughout the parish, across all of our communities, that this is something that's valuable.
And I think we have to also look at our own strategic plan and see, you know, what are we willing to, where are we going to increase funding here? Where is it going to reduce funding? And we just have to understand what we're doing here as a whole big picture. Thank you. And thank y'all for your work on this and for forming this committee and all of the work that you're doing. I value it greatly. Thank you.
Board Member Gode.
Yes, thank you. And again, I echo thank you for all the hard work that went into this. I was there for some of the embryonic stages of some of this, and it's good to see it coming together. I guess one of my questions, and questions is not necessarily the right word, but one of the areas that I have concern about is I really like the diverse delivery model. I think that is excellent and the kind of thing that we need to do. But in sitting here hearing different funding sources, different areas, different capital expenditures needed, how are we going to herd all these cats and have a plan that everybody can adhere to and have some sort of governance? Because I know as a board, we're going to want to control our money, and Head Start's going to want to control their money, and so on and so on and so on. So what is the vision for how do we get together and corral all the cats focusing in one direction?
That's great.
And I'm not being negative about any of this. I think it's wonderful, but that's going to be one of the issues that we're going to have is how do we keep everyone on plan, on task, working together?
Absolutely. That's the work. Yes. And that's the Ready Start Advisory Council, is really the group that brings all the people who represent all the different funding sources it's going to take to the same table, meeting regularly. And, you know, the vision is that each of these priorities will have some task forces that will work within that to be able to bring it to that advisory council, and then as needed, they'll have to each bring it to their respective groups to make, you know, especially when we get to resource allocation. But the idea is the Ready Start Advisory Council becomes the table where that stuff really gets hashed through as it needs to be hashed through. Where, you know, the Head Start people are there next with the school district people, with the childcare providers, and so on and so forth.
And I guess that group really is a very group with much experience, but no power. And so, again, are we going to be relying on influence to make all that happen? Or, and I'm not looking for an answer right now. I'm just saying we got to be really thoughtful about this, because I think that's going to be one of the critical items to make this work. Is how do we get a plan? And maybe one way to start thinking about this is to come up with some strategic plans from the group, and have boards like ourselves vote and adopt those plans, so that every implementation step doesn't have to come back to the board, because you got 9 board members and you'll have 14 opinions about how it should be done.
Does that mean you have 5 personally?
Exactly. So I'm known as the practical guy, and I accept that.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to think through that. But I think that's going to be one of the key items. Great ideas can lead to great results, but the implementation has to be there.
Yes.
And so I really want to make sure that we focus on how do we really make these things happen.
Yeah, and I think that's an excellent idea, and we have seen that in other communities where the school board commits to the plan, the parish government commits to the plan, the various stakeholders that really need to vote and approve it, and then assign their designees to, work through the implementation steps and the unexpected challenges that always come up in those.
And I'm not trying to put forth an answer. I'm just saying that some kind of addressing that issue has to be early on in the stage of all this. If not, things can have a way of falling apart. And I know, you've seen a lot more of these around the country. You've seen what other folks have done and things like that. So I would really hope you would be able to bring your experience to this and help us walk our way through this, because this is something we've never done before. And it is something that is so desperately needed that we have to find a way to do it. But in finding a way to do it, a lot of us are going to have to put some of our own ideas aside and go for the greater common good. And that doesn't always happen, but we need to try to make sure that we have a good shot at making that happen. Thank you.
What kind of guy did you say you were? The reasonable guy? Is that what you said? Practical. Can I get you a t-shirt? No, I think those are great questions. Thank you. And we can go on. I think you've got some testimonials next.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to allow some of our committee members to join me at the mic. Let's start with Tessa. Will you?
Hi, I am Tessa Holloway. I'm the owner of Kids Carousel. And one of you guys said something about the diverse delivery. It is fabulous. Everything that EBR is doing right now is fabulous. We had a walkthrough today with some superintendents, and it was wonderful. And they absolutely loved what we're doing. And it does need to be expanded. We do need to keep it going. And it's taking all of these kids that would be at home with grandma and great grandma and just not learning, and it's providing education and everything for them. The social emotional aspect of it alone is just great, and it's going to help. And the more kids that we can help, obviously, it's just going to help the community, and they're staying in the community instead of leaving and going to a different parish because they don't like the schools here. So I just really would love the support of everybody, a little bit more than what we got here right now. But do you have any questions about the micro centers or the diverse delivery?
Mr. Gode does.
Yes, thank you very much. And be kind when you say grandparents, because it's all right.
No.
No, I'm joking. What, in your opinion, because you're at Crestworth, I believe now, what has your partnership with EBR allowed you to do that you would not be allowed to do if that partnership was not in place?
I would not be able to serve those children. So
Is it the physical space?
it's everything, because this is inside of a facility that's already running. My overhead is not XYZ. You know, in one of my facilities, my mortgage is $24,000 a month. I'm not paying $24,000 a month to house these kids and teach them and give them the education and everything. So being inside of a facility is a blessing for the kids, the staff. We're able to pay more. You're just able to do more inside of a school system.
And what about the benefits of those children? I know I'm leading the witness, but
No.
what about the benefits for those children being in a quality
getting them prepared.
school environment?
It is-
and other.
It's getting them prepared. Like, they are very much so more capable when they're going to pre-K 4 and then getting ready to go to kindergarten, and the whole literacy issue that we're having right now. It starts, you know, hopefully we can get this birth through 5, but starting at 3 is awesome. But it's just helping everything along the way. It's just funneling them earlier. They're getting on track earlier. They're learning. It's just creating a whole better system
Thank you.
and better children.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Anybody else?
No, I think that,
Thank y'all
not yet,
so
but we
much.
might call you back up.
And I'll just say, you know, what we heard from the teachers in the 4-year-old classrooms after they were at Kids Carousel is pretty consistently those children were coming in more ready than the children they had been seeing who had not had the experience of the micro center. So, yes. I'd like to call up Dr. Wayne.
Good evening, everyone. I was not expecting to speak this evening, but I'm the medical director for pediatrics for Ochsner here in Baton Rouge. And I just wanted to let you guys know that it was an honor and a privilege to be part of this process. I'm not an educator myself, but as a member of the healthcare team for lots of our children here in the parish, I felt like it was important for us to have a voice as well. We are seeing the benefits of early education programs, and we're seeing what happens to our development in children who do fall through the cracks and aren't allowed to have the educational experiences that they need in those formative years. So again, I just wanted to say on behalf of Ochsner that it was a privilege to be a part of this process.
Thank you. It's Dr. Gravois?
Dr. Wayne.
Dr. Wayne.
James Wayne.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Dr. Wayne. I think everything y'all are doing is great. I've been really on this for a long time, as Ms. Webb knows. And Dr. Saunier, thank you for your work. I do, so I'm saying yay, right? Because when we did the last strategic plan, not this one, but the one before, one of the 5 points that we worked on was early childhood education. And when we would have our subcommittees, no one came. No one seemed to understand the importance of it, but it has definitely gained a lot more traction. I think there's a lot more research out there that points to what we're doing, but I have an idea. And when I do that at my office, they all run. But anyway, but you know, a long time ago, when I first started serving on the board, there was a district in, I think, Pennsylvania, and they actually were, the school district worked with the local hospitals. And when a child was born, there was a packet that the school district gave to that mother, and that mother would actually literally be able to register her child for a program by which the school district would keep up with them. And so as they got to 1-year-old, they would send out things. This is what your child this is what you should be working on. This is what you should be focusing on. And oh, by the way, the library has this resource, or the local recreation department has this resource. And they did that all the way up until they went to school. And it was amazingly successful. So Dr. Wayne, you and I got to try to figure out how we get something like that going.
Absolutely. So we're giving that sort of information to the parents. It does not include information about the school district, though. So pairing that based on where they live within the district, I think that's an excellent
It could be a game
idea.
changer.
Absolutely.
It's not a fast, it's not a fast food type, satisfaction type thing, immediate satisfaction, but it's the kind of thing that I think there are a lot of parents out there that just don't know. They don't know what they're supposed to be teaching their kids and working with their kids. And then I'm sorry, but I'm going to tell a little story. My mother raised me and 3 other boys, and God bless her soul. And after she did that, she opened a little daycare. She had a 3rd grade education, but she worked with those kids and on colors, and she would, she barely could read, but she would read and learn about what she needed to do with those kids. And all of her kids, including my brothers, maybe with the exception of me, and all those kids she did daycare with, they're all so successful, doctors, lawyers, accountants, and CPAs. And it's just that little bit that you work with children and understand what they need to be learning and what they need to be exposed to, and that stimulation. And so if my mother, a 3rd grade educated person, can do it, just think of what we can do when we bring in really quality programs and we coordinate that with all of what you're doing to what we're going to be doing when we get them in our school system. So I don't usually talk this much, but I just wanted to share that with you since you just happen to be the medical profession that came up. So thank you so much, Dr.
Thank you.
Wayne. I appreciate it.
Are there any other members of the committee or the staff team that want to speak? If I didn't call on them, they're not going to show up.
Well, I am happy that you all are here, and thank you so much for everybody who's pitching in trying to make this happen. So
Great.
that's it.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
No, I don't have any other questions. You want to close?
Just wanted to say thank you to the entire Ready Start network. I know when I came on board, one of the things you do as superintendent is notice a gap and then begin to galvanize as many people as possible within the various sectors in the community to kind of move this work. I do believe, as a lot of this initial work started before I arrived, that this will be a tremendous game changer to this parish. And it's also important that we continue to think about the work that we do from the time a child is born to their career. Louisiana, or even here in Baton Rouge, is a great community, but many of the folks who are born and raised here stay here. And so it's a unique opportunity where we get to shape and support our community in ways that most other communities across this country do not have an opportunity due to the amount of transientness that actually happens. And I do believe that we are not only leading that here in our state, but I think that helps us also as a community economically from the long-term end. I find that the early childhood work is a bookend. The beginning of the bookend as the workforce is the other end of that. And I'm just excited to be in a community that wants to take this on. Many communities struggle with this in spaces, not because of the will to want to do it, but they start to think about all the barriers. And what I think is really great is that we're coming together and saying, hey, regardless of the sets of challenges that we have, we can get this done. I'm also thankful to the board with their leadership wanting to allow us to push this, because if we didn't invest those initial dollars where most folks told us, oh, don't do this because, you can't sustain it and all that, we would not even be where we are today. And I think we are in a great place. We build as we go. And then years from now, when the success of this parish is successful, other people will take credit for it, but we'll remember this time. So, but really excited about that work. I just want to say thank you so much. Continue to push. We are all in. As I can say, President Tapman and the rest of the board, we've been pushing for this since the time we got here. We have this as a KPI, key performance indicator, that this board agreed upon since the time we got our strategic plan, and we're going to continue to move that work together. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And Mr. Ballou moves, we adjourn. Thank you.